The next panel there'll be three of us. There'll be myself, Simon Whitehouse, and Chris Adigwu. This panel discussion will be looking at the constant need for upgrades, I should say. If it's not broken, why do we need to fix it? And that's certainly something that I've seen in consulting across the region, and probably you two gentlemen have, where people want the newest, the shiniest, they want the best and the latest. So, Simon, if I can start off with you, it's sort of in your consulting practice, how do you handle these types of conversations?
Thanks, John. Well, for me, it comes down to trying to understand, first of all, the key drivers for the security budget and the security solution, and the operational requirement. I'm a big believer that as security professionals, we should all endeavour to make sure that we position our clients to have freedom of choice, and more important, adaptability. Because the security systems that we're prescribing need to be able to respond to dynamic threat. And of course, dynamic threat is ever-changing. We face many political pressures around the world, and as different political pressures change, regions change, and the type of attack that we may face on our infrastructure, our facilities, and our key assets also change. So for me, I certainly believe that adaptability is the key word that we need to be focused on for this particular subject.
Thanks, Simon. And Chris, I would appreciate some comments. First off, could you just give us a little bit about the organisation that you represent? And then we'd love to hear from your perspective.
I will much dwell on the fact that an obsolete system is a gold mine, a gold mine for the criminal. And every day, we as professionals, career persons in the security sector, we also have professionals who are criminals. They work 24/7. We also need to up our ante on a regular basis. In fact, we need to go 3 steps ahead, because they also work 24/7, coming with new schemes, new devices, on how to hack into your system, on how to break through your access control. So as a security practitioner, regular security update is not an option any longer. It's something we need to run with quickly.
So just, I guess, to follow up on this obsolete concept, and I'll come back to you, Simon, how do we determine when it's necessary to actually upgrade the systems and the technologies rather than maintain what we have?
I believe, John, that there are many components to answering that particular question. First of all, money talks. And depending upon whether a security system has been procured and put into a particular facility at the construction phase, or whether the system has evolved through a period of fit-out development once the shell and core has been put in place. Again, the needs of the facility and the needs of the user is ever-changing. We've got new mix of tenants in mixed-use developments. They may have various corporate security requirements, standard corporate systems across the world. And those particular users are going to have a requirement for a particular level of sophistication and a particular level of security. So when it comes to upgrading a legacy system, the likelihood is that a particular facility is not going to be their first choice to move to if they're not happy with technical or physical security measures that are actually in place. The other key driver, of course, is cost. And many organisations are looking to reduce manpower costs by using more sophisticated technology. The legacy systems have a place, but cannot do many of the things that leading edge technology can.
So we've talked here a bit about, I guess, designing security in at the early stages. And if we were, I guess, with utopia, with the perfect world that we aim to live in, we're looking at designing in the right integrated technologies so we have less need for upgrade. Is that the aim that you're heading towards?
Yes, I'm talking about understanding the opportunity to put resilience and redundancy into a security package. Again, it's a fine line. Over the many years that we've been involved in consulting in this region, we always try to push the client to put as much embedded resilience and redundancy into networks, hardware, and software systems so that that magic word freedom of choice can actually be followed through the life cycle of a particular facility or a particular security contract.
So moving over to you, Chris, in terms of where do you see within your realm the integration of technologies as an enabler of having a requirement for planned upgrades rather than urgent necessary upgrades? How do you look at the integration cycle together?
Integrating. Most security hardwares now are IP driven. So I think the bottom line is looking at solutions. From the climb I operate, is quite a little bit different from what we find here or in Europe. It's unique in the sense that we are exposed to modern technologies, but also running at that pace could be challenging too, because you find some of the organizations, probably any new hardware that comes, you want to go for it, but you also need to be sure you have the right personnel to even manage the systems in place. So that's a little bit of challenge. So you find a situation where you say, okay, let's first of all get acquainted. Let's first of all get acquainted with this particular system as we move on, and talking about integration now goes beyond. That's why I say from the climate I operate, that doesn't really come into it, but it's also part of what we do, making sure we have proper integration as we move on to embrace the new challenges that comes.
So interesting, Chris, because you've raised some technological differences to your environment,
Yes.
to other operating environments, and that often comes back to a bit of a phrase I have with many that I work with, which is function before technology. Let's get the function of security right before we consider the technology. And you're very much saying something similar in terms of you need to make the security personnel of the right competency to drive, to manage the technology around them. So are there any particular successes or challenges that you've seen where you've seen a success around adoption of technology, perhaps new technology, or do you think it's it should be a great leap or should be a gradual stepping stone?
Simply put, I strongly suggest it should be gradual. Gradual in the sense that the adversary works day in, day out. So it should be gradual because we have persons who are supposed to operate those technologies put in place. So bringing it in before they get abreast with the operational aspect of it, you don't give chance. There shouldn't be any gap. So the one they are used to, they go gradually. Gradually, like for software, it's advisable that's automatically done almost like every other month. But for hardware replacement and change once in 5 years, and strongly in my environment, we always try to embed that in the SLAs with our clients. So it comes automatically. If there's anything to put up, it's just part of the deliverable from us supporting the system.
So you raised a really good point around service level agreements, SLAs. So Simon, if we can sort of step forward with that in terms of when we're looking at bringing in new integration around new technologies, what should we be thinking about in planning for the future around service level agreements and then perhaps key performance indicators? How does that get involved in the early stage to make success later?
Well, for me, without question, it's all about whole life costs, because so much focus seems to be on the actual capital outlay of a particular system these days, whether it be for regulatory compliance or whether it be to actually address threat and associated risk that we face today. But what about tomorrow? What about sustainability? What about the longevity of the system and the integrity of the system at board level? Because most of us as security practitioners, we need to get buy-in. You know, we need to convince the people that hold the purse strings, well, we've got to do this because we've got to satisfy the regulator, but how can we actually turn security on its head and show it as a benefit within our organisation? And how can we attract new business and new people within our community because they want to come to us because our environment is a safer place to be? So whole life costs without question. Think about mean time between failure. Think about the initial setup period and make sure your integrator goes through a period where they actually do soak testing and factory acceptance testing, because ultimately, if they don't and they install out of a box on site, the chances are that the mean time between failure for that particular component is reduced rather than it actually being engineered properly and soak tested properly and any of the initial bugs being ironed out before the system and the solution gets to site.
So it sounds like when you talk about sort of whole life costing, we're talking about a whole life cycle from cradle to grave, so to speak. So, Chris, you know, I'd be interested in your thoughts around some of your experiences in preparing for new technologies, and what are some of the challenges or limitations that you've seen on a facility who wants or intends to implement new technology? What are those hurdles they have to overcome first?
Fortunately, like most of my clients are those who are also technology savvy, and they put me on my toes. They put me on my toes. So I find a situation where I make sure I attend virtually every expo available. I just came back from ISJ just last week in London, and just to see what is happening in the technology world now, what is happening in the security world. So on my own part, making sure my clients get the best of my services, I keep on proposing to them. Even when they are not ready, I say, this is the next way to go. This is the next step to take. You know, it's just like school security now. You know, you find, for now, we have a lot of video analytics now. There are some that are just coming up now that will be able to probably analyze to see the gun. That wasn't in place before now. You know, to see the gun from the video images. Some of those technologies are just coming up. Already, I've not handled it, but I say, there's something upcoming There's something upcoming, get prepared for it, you know. And the systems we put in place are systems that are scalable.
So that's a very,
Yeah.
a very interesting point. You made 2 points I'm going to pull out of that, and I'll get Simon to sort of comment on that. One is scalability, and secondly, you mentioned about preparing the end user for the new technology. So Simon, if you could sort of perhaps bounce some ideas off those 2 items.
Yeah, scalability. Raise the bar high. Go for as much resilience and redundancy from the outset as possible. You can always come down. That's that nice word that some people refer to as a nice word. I don't like the word value engineering because value engineering usually means, in my vocabulary, cut the spec in half. But the resilience and the redundancy, you know, unless you've actually got the right people at the table for the design, for example, you know, a system designer will think, oh, I've put sufficient bandwidth budget in place for 100% resiliency. But on a video surveillance network, they've not actually thought about the effects of lighting. So they've not actually thought about the difference between what happens during the day and what happens at night, and how the network spikes at night because the lighting hasn't been designed and optimized in association with the video surveillance camera sensors. So that's the first part of the puzzle for me. And the second one, John?
The second one was around how do we look at preparing the client for the next sort of advancement in technology.
Security strategy and understanding security strategy is, in my opinion, so important when determining the security technology system and where it's going to go in the future. Where are we today? Where do we need to be tomorrow? How is the system likely to evolve over a period of a 10 or a 15 or a 20-year life expectancy? We usually budget between a 7 to 10-year period for a system upgrade before we actually look to write off either obsolete or end-of-life systems. And we need to make sure that as security professionals, we warn our clients and preempt our clients to make sure that when they're thinking about whole life costs, they need to think about planning for a system replacement or upgrade around about those time intervals. Because if not, what could happen around the world, in this region and in other regions, is exactly what happened in the United Kingdom. In 1997, the UK Home Office funded hundreds of millions of pounds worth of public money on town and city centre surveillance systems. All they thought about in political policy was the capital investment cost of the system. They failed to think about sustainability. They failed to think about the long-term goal. And as a result of that, end users and local authorities were left holding the baby. They were left in a situation where they couldn't afford to run the systems, and then they had to go looking for partners to go from a dispersed system to a centralized system, and try to actually partner with other authorities to improve efficiency and reduce costs so that they met the affordability criteria.
So look, thanks, Simon. So Chris, if I come back to you, and I just touched upon something that Simon was saying around the life cycle costing and systems and technologies being implemented and then not being able to be maintained. Is that something that you've experienced in Africa, where great ideas have happened and then the implementation hasn't happened so well?
Can you check the question again, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you rephrase the question?
So rephrase the question. So what are some of your experiences around having seen technologies implemented, and then how well are they maintained or not, because the user mightn't have the right skill set or the right budget or so forth?
That is typically our biggest challenge, because most of these technologies, they are not manufactured in our, they are all imported technology. Well, that's why most times some of us are also pushing for homegrown technologies that we can easily support. Thank you.
Look, thank you very much, both of you. Our time's finished for today, but if we could just thank the panel members here. Thank you very much.